Hello. So for today's lesson, we will be going over second grade mathematics. The content objective of this will be students will be able to tell and write time to the nearest 5 minutes using AM and PM on analog as well as digital clocks. Students will also be able to express portions of an hour using the fractional terms half an hour, half past, quarter of an hour, quarter after, and quarter till. So to begin this lesson, you will learn how to tell and write time to the nearest 5 minutes. So I'm going to teach you the different parts of the hour, such as stated in the content objective, half an hour, half past, quarter of an hour, quarter after, and quarter till. Before we begin, there are some things you need to know, beginning with a digital clock. A digital clock is a clock that shows the time using numbers. A digital clock shows the time moving from left to right, starting with the hour and then the minutes. So I have a couple examples here. So it is kind of hard to see, but you can see here we have a digital clock that says 10:33, reading from left to right. There is also, like I said, it is hard to see. There is a couple buttons up here where a light will appear to show you if it's AM or PM, meaning AM morning, PM afternoon. Another example I have of a digital clock will be this smaller one here. So to go a little bit more in depth with the digital clock, we do want to see that it is 12:34 with 58 seconds. And then also above the 58 seconds, it does say PM. So it is 12:34 PM. So what this is saying is going from left to right, it is the 12th hour, meaning it is the afternoon, so PM, with 34 minutes. This little 58 is the seconds represented on digital clocks. So what we're saying is it is 12:34 with 58 seconds. So once this 58 seconds hits 60, this digital clock will display 12:35, and then the seconds will continue to roll until the next 60 seconds continues. So once all the 60 seconds of the seconds area on the digital clock keeps going, it will just bring the minutes up. So once the minutes get to 59 and the seconds clock adds up to 60, this will then bring this up an hour, making it 1 o'clock. So that's how a digital clock works. So then next, we want to look at the analog clock. The analog clock can be a little bit more difficult. An analog clock is a clock that shows the time by position of the hands on the dial. So on the analog clock, it is round. I do have an example here. So the example here, and I'm sure many of you have seen this hanging up in the classroom, we do have the round analog clock. So you can see the numbers go from 1 all the way to 12. So you see here, there are also little dashes in the analog clock. But before we get to that, let's start with the hands. So the hands on the dial each have different representations. There's 3 different hands on the analog clock. So let's start with the small one. The small one here is the hour hand. So what we want to look at is when this small hand is on any of these numbers, that's going to represent the hour. Now the small hand will not always be directly on a number. Sometimes it will be in between the 1 and the 2, 2 and the 3, so on and so forth. So if the small hand is between the 1 and the 2, and if it's not completely at the 2, that's going to still be the 1 o'clock hour. Moving on to this medium hand, this is going to be the minute hand. So this is going to represent what minute. So going back to these little dashes, starting here, when we're talking minutes, we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So not only do the numbers represent the hour, the numbers can also represent the minutes of the hour. So the minutes can go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and then we start the new hour here. So since there are 60 minutes, this adds up to 60 minutes with all the little dashes in between, starting with 1 and going all the way to 59, 60, depending on how you look at it. So the next hand we want to take a look at is this one up top here. It's kind of hard to see. That is the second hand. So the second hand on the analog clock never stops moving. That is constantly ticking with each little dash. So the way this works is this second hand is constantly moving. So since we have 60 seconds in a minute, this little hand is going to tick all the way around the analog clock. Once it gets to the 12, 60 seconds, this minute hand will move up 1 minute. So this is going to continue to happen. This will continue to move around. As this hand moves up to the 59th minute, and between the 59 and the, let's say the 60, 12, right there, 60 minute, 12 hour mark. So you want to put it here. So once we're at 59 minutes and this second hand goes around, this minute hand will end up on the 12, meaning o'clock. So if it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, it doesn't matter, this minute hand will always end on the 12. So once that happens, this hand is slowly moving as the minutes get higher. It'll get closer to the next hour. Once the minute hand goes from 59 to 60 is when this small hand will end up on the next hour. And then so on and so forth, and it'll keep moving. Like I said, the second hand never stops. So that is how these work. So you have the small little unmarked dashes which represent the little minutes. You have the hour hand, you have the minute hand, and then the second hand. So if we're talking about the hour on an analog clock, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock, any of those, 30, half an hour. If we're talking minutes, then we go to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. So after doing that, we want to move on to, let's see, do you have another example representing, so as you can see here, so we want to go over and we have the little hand focused on the 1. We have the minute hand on the 12 as well as the second hand on the 12. So what this clock is saying is that it is 1 o'clock. Okay. The next example I have is this. So we have our hour hand, which is in the middle of 10 and 11. We have our minute hand on the 6. The 6 represents 30 minutes or half an hour. The second hand is directly on the 12. So by looking at this clock, it tells us that it is 10:30. Okay, take a look there. Alright, so the last step before we begin practicing together is we need to go over the different parts of the hour. So as I stated earlier, there are 5 different parts of the hour. So first, let's take a look at half an hour. So when we're talking half an hour, we're meaning 30 minutes. It could be 1:30, it could be from 1 o'clock to 1:30, it could be 1:30 to 2 o'clock. It doesn't matter, whatever the consecutive altogether 30 minutes is, that represents half an hour. So let's say, for example, it's 1:30. What time will it be when half an hour goes by? It'll be 2 o'clock. Okay? So now that we have that, let's move on to half past. So the difference between half an hour and half past is 30 minutes after a specified hour. So what we're saying is 2:30 is 2:30. Because remember, half an hour is 30 minutes. So half past the hour would be either 2:30, 3:30, 4:30. It depends on what the hour is. As long as there's 30 minutes that have gone by, that is half past. Next, we want to move on to quarter of an hour, which is 15 minutes. So if we have there are 4 quarters in an hour. So if we go 15, that's the first quarter. 30 minutes is the second quarter. From 30 minutes to 45 minutes, that's the third quarter. And then we talk 45 minutes to 60 minutes, or that new hour. That is the fourth quarter. So if we say quarter of an hour, we're talking about, let's say 12:15, 11:15, anything like that. So you really want to specify a quarter of an hour is 15 minutes. So you want to think of it like there's 4 quarters in a dollar. Now granted, a quarter is 25 cents, whereas 15 minutes is the quarter of an hour. So you want to break that hour into the 4 different parts that we have. So there are 4 quarters: 15, 30, 45, and 60. Okay? So next, we want to talk about quarter after. So quarter after is almost the same as 15 minutes, almost the same as half past. However, because we said that the quarter is 15 minutes, quarter after is going to be 15 minutes after a specific hour. So for example, if it is 9:15, you can say it is quarter after 9. You can also say 7:15. It is quarter after 7. So what you're saying is that is 15 minutes after whatever hour you are on. Okay? So next, we want to go to quarter till. So it's kind of short for quarter until the next hour is the way that I think about it. So we want to talk quarter till is 15 minutes before the next hour coming up. Meaning, if it is 9:45, it is a quarter until 10. So because you're at 9:45, the next hour, let me pull the analog clock back up here. So if you're looking at 9:45, both hands are going to be here. So there is 5, 10, and 15 minutes before the small hand would get to the 10. Okay? So that is quarter till. Okay. So I do have a couple questions. So when does AM and PM matter? AM and PM matters when it is either morning or afternoon. So anytime between 12 a.m. and 11:59 a.m., that is morning. There are 12 hours in the morning and 12 hours in the afternoon. So anything from 12 o'clock p.m. until 11:59 p.m. is all evening. Okay? So let's take a look here. I do have a clock that represents, going back to this, 10:33. So I know it's hard to see, but up top here you can kind of see that little dot. So this represents 10:33 on the digital clock, AM. Okay? So now let's look at another picture of a digital clock that would represent, kind of hard to see, okay? But we are looking at 4 o'clock p.m. And you can see here, this one's a little bit easier to see. You can definitely see that p.m. And then if I bring it back a little bit, you can see the little p.m. button is lit up. So this digital clock is representing 4 o'clock p.m., meaning it is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so how can I tell a.m. and p.m.? Well, we just went over that. So on the digital clocks, most of the time there are either little numbers or it will say it. So if the little numbers on the side are lit up, the little letters saying AM and PM, there will be a little button that lights up. So whatever button is lit up, that'll tell you the difference between AM and PM. There was an example that I had in here. It was the 12:34 with 58 seconds on the digital clock. That one had the PM written out. Let me pull that one back up. So this one, it doesn't have the button lit up, but you can see there it does have the letters written out to tell you that it is PM, so the afternoon. Okay, so lastly, I do have a couple worksheets that you guys will get, and then we will do them together, okay? And that is the lesson on second grade measurements, telling and writing time. Thank you.